Okay, I'm recording.
All right, hello everybody and welcome to the fourth EV Hour of Power as part of National Drive Electric Week SLO. I'm Alex Economou and I'm the coordinator of the Central Coast Clean Cities Coalition, also known as C5. We've had a great week of events so far, and I want to thank the SLO Climate Coalition and SLO County APCD for co-hosting National Drive Electric Week with us. Also, a big shout out to all the local sponsors and businesses that have donated prizes for us to give away throughout the week. So today's event is a panel discussion where EV users speak out and share their experiences driving electric vehicles. And while the panelists are speaking, whenever we refer to electric vehicles or EVs, we're going to be talking about both electric cars and electric bikes. So before we begin and introduce today's panelists, there are a few housekeeping items that we want to briefly go over. And Jackie, I'm going to ask if you can go ahead and share your screen. So first off, Spanish language interpretation is being provided for this event. If you are interested in using the language interpretation feature, please find and click on the interpretation icon as shown on the slide. If you're choosing to listen in English, you must make sure that the interpretation feature is turned off. Those choosing Spanish must select Spanish and then mute original audio. Please note that the language interpretation feature only works on the Zoom desktop application and won't work if you're joining us from your phone. And now I'm going to turn it over to our interpreter, David, to explain how to use the language interpretation feature in Spanish.
Interpretación de idiomas en Zoom. Tendremos servicio de interpretación. A todos los participantes se les piden que buscan y opriman el icono de interpretación, interpretation. Para inglés, tiene que hacer clic en inglés y luego hacer clic en silenciar audio original, mute original audio. Para español, tiene que hacer clic en español y luego hacer clic en silenciar audio original, mute original audio. Observación. Para usar la función de interpretación de idioma, los participantes tienen que descargar la aplicación de Zoom en su desktop.
Alex, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So a little bit more housekeeping. This panel is being recorded and a link to the recording will be posted to the SLO Climate Coalition's website following the event. And lastly, we encourage that all attendees engage with the panelists and ask questions. And you can do this by either typing your question into the Q&A box or using the raise my hand icon if you would like to ask a question vocally instead. The second half of this panel will be reserved for Q&A, and we will be answering the questions that we receive and calling on attendees that have their hands raised. I'm also curious in hearing attendees' responses to some of these questions. So if there's time at the end, I'll open it up to the audience to see if anybody would like to share their experience with driving an EV. And lastly, later on, there will be a quiz question and prize drawing, so stay tuned for that. And we'll be raffling off a $25 gift card to Taco Temple in San Luis Obispo. All right, now I'd like to introduce today's panelists. So we have 5 great EV advocates and users that will be speaking with you today. First off, Barry Rands. We also have Justin Bradshaw, Bob Shambron, Asit Rekar, and Molly Pearson. So I'm going to turn things over to Barry for our first question and ask him to give a little bit of background about himself and talk about what electric vehicles that he owns and how he uses them. So take it away, Barry.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Great introduction, and thank you for co-hosting this event with ABCD and Slow Climate Coalition. I've been driving an electric car since 2013. My first one was a Nissan Leaf, and now I drive a Kia Niro EV. I bought that about just a little bit over a year ago. And it is a great car. I've also got some money down on a Tesla, and that'll be my wife's car.
All right, thank you, Barry. Justin, would you like to go ahead next and tell a little bit about yourself and what electric vehicles you own?
Sure. Okay, so my name is Justin Bradshaw. I am I also work with the Climate Coalition. And let's see, I got my first electric car in about 2016. We inherited a lease of a Chevy Spark EV, which is a funny electric car. It was basically the conversion of the gas EV. It was the first GM electric car since the EV1. And that was a great car, although it was pretty more powerful than the drivetrain could handle, kind of funny. And that convinced my wife to let me get a Tesla Model 3 when it first came out. We were in line the day it was announced down in Santa Barbara. I arrived 2 hours before the reservations began, and there were almost 100 people in front of me already. It was a stunning day when I realized how popular EVs could become. And I've been loving that car ever since. Along the way, I also bought a Sondors e-bike. It was this little startup Kickstarter. I think it was an Indiegogo actually, that had the cheapest e-bike you could ever imagine. It was $500. And I actually received it. And it was a great bike until it was stolen. So I'm without an e-bike. I just have regular bikes now, but I ride that a lot, and I put almost all my miles on my Tesla.
I'm sorry to hear about your e-bike. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, I hope the thief is getting good use out of it.
All right, thank you, Justin. Next up, we've got Asit to talk a little bit about his experience with electric vehicles and give a little bit of a background about himself.
Hi, my name is Asit Raikar, and I moved to SLO in 2017. Before that, we were in the Bay Area. I've owned a 2012 Nissan Leaf, and we bought it in March 2012. And this was pretty much very early on, where only 4 new generation EVs were available, and less than about 25,000 electric vehicles of the new generation. And I'm not talking about the EV1 and the original Toyota RAV4 of the 1990s. This is the new Tesla and Chevy Volt and those. So we usually are not early adopters of any technology, but with the electric car, it just made sense. I've been interested in them ever since the Who Killed the Electric Car documentary came out, and even before that. So we have owned our Nissan Leaf since 2012, and I'm a big fan of running the cars into the ground. Unfortunately, the first-gen battery kind of degraded faster than we would have liked. So this year, we swapped out the battery with the Nissan dealership, and we got a new life and almost a new car. And it's back to 100-mile range, and so we love it. And we drive it everywhere around town in SLO. I also have a e-bike. I teach at Cal Poly, and I built or assembled my own e-bike, and I ride that to campus. Avoid all the parking hassles. Ride it around town whenever I can. I just swapped it into a new frame, and the new frame needs a little bit of work. So right now it's out of commission, but soon I'll be back on it. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Asit. All right, next up, I'll turn it over to Molly to talk a little bit about herself and the electric vehicles that she has.
Thanks, Alex. My name is Molly Pearson. I work for the Air Pollution Control District in Santa Barbara County. And I'm the planning division manager. We have a lot of things going on here. But I actually have been in the business of air quality for decades, and I got my first taste of an electric vehicle when I worked for the Ventura Air Agency, and we had on loan a Honda EV Plus, and it was a great vehicle. I drove it all the way home from Ventura to Santa Barbara, had a really expensive battery. They were only leasing them, but I got a taste of it, and I thought, this would be great. We need to do some work on batteries. So anyways, come to 2016, ended up purchasing a 2016 Nissan Leaf and actually upgraded to a 2019 recently. So as far as cars go, I love my 2019 Leaf. It's got a little more range, works well for me, but we'll get more into that later. As far as e-bikes, I've always loved bikes. I grew up biking San Francisco Bike Coalition. My father was a founder of, so I strongly believe in biking, and e-bikes are wonderful because it kind of takes that end of the day, like, oh, I don't feel like riding up the hill feeling. So I commute mostly on my e-bike now. I have a Trek Verve e-bike with a little basket in the back, and it's got the fenders and lights, and I just love that too. It's my primary vehicle now.
Great. Well, thank you, Molly. It looks like Bob hasn't joined us yet, but Jackie, if I'll just ask you to keep monitoring the attendees, and if Bob joins us, we can bring him in and get him to answer some of these questions. Molly, I'm going to stick with you for the next question, but just in the meantime, I'm also going to launch our first poll question, just trying to get a sense from the audience about whether folks currently drive or ride an electric vehicle, and if not, if they're interested. So go ahead and answer that, and we'll come back to this poll in a couple minutes. So Molly, for the next question, would you be able to talk a little bit about how and when you charge your bike and your car, and what kind of range you get, and what your daily mileage looks like?
Sure, I've got a really good use scenario. I charge at home primarily now that I've been riding my bike. But at our work, we have ample public charging, so it's very cheap. The fuel cost is super low, and I'm able to charge while I'm working, and it's available. So, you know, I've got a really good ideal use case in terms of my home charging and work charging. So it's kind of 50 where I charge. It's only 4 miles to work, so the drive is easy. Although I used to do, when I was carting kids around, you know, maybe a 20-mile day with my Leaf, but still ample room to charge and ample range on my car. It's a 40 kilowatt battery that I have now, so ideally the range is 150 miles. But I have commuted up to Santa Maria in it, and it's a little hard to get all the way to Santa Maria and back on a 50 kW battery, but there's been some fast charging along the way that I've been able to, you know, stop and shop by dinner and do some fast charging just to make that longer commute. But that is one of the challenges. We need more charging up in Santa Maria to do that commute easier. Trying to remember your questions.
Yeah, no, that's great, and it'll be nice once you're able to drive up to Santa Maria and have some more accessible charging stations. It looks like Bob joined us, so I'll let him introduce himself in just a second. Thank you everybody who's filled out the poll. I'll go ahead and share the results on that. So it looks like about 50% of people said that they don't currently have an EV, but they're interested in getting one in the future. 36% of people have an electric car. Another person has an electric bike, and somebody had both. So thank you for sharing those answers. Bob, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself a little bit and talk to us about your experience with electric vehicles. And if you also want to talk a little bit about how you charge your vehicle and what your range is, and give us a little bit of insight into that, that'd be great.
Okay, well, my name is Bob Schanbraum, obviously. I've been riding an electric bike for about 15 years instead of a car. It's my go-to vehicle. I always use that first, and I think in my best years, I substituted about 5,000 miles worth of car travel with an electric bike. Right now I have a nice high bike, a good quality, decent quality bike, and I have a do-it-yourself tandem bike, which I just got off of. And for grocery shopping, I got big baskets on the back. So I was actually on the Who Killed the Electric Vehicle panel about 15 years ago. Looks like before some of you might have been born. And the issue back then is pretty much the same as it is now. It was expense. And we're right on the cusp now, arguably, of electric vehicles being cheaper or about the same price as gasoline-powered vehicles. So that's why about a year ago, I bought a plug-in hybrid electric Prius. It's called a Prius Prime. And I think that critical, to stop me if I'm going on and on, okay? I hope to be answering the question here in a minute, I think. But I have a Prius Prime, and I go about 70% of my miles that I use that car as all electric. So then it switches over to hybrid. So I'm using about 80 gallons per year of gasoline, and the rest is all electric. So arguably, I'm actually more efficient, more carbon efficient than a Tesla long distance Model 3. But there's not enough data out there to really make a very clear determination. We may get into those details later. That's it.
All right. Thank you for that great background. Excuse me. Yeah, that's great that we have another DIY bike amongst our panelists. That's super cool. All right, Asit, same question to you. Would you be able to talk a little bit about how and when you charge and how many miles you typically get on a full charge and what your driving habits are like?
Well,
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't say
okay.
when I charge. I generally charge at night.
Okay, so charging and driving is way different in San Luis Obispo than it was in the Bay Area. San Luis Obispo is a small city, and now we mostly work from home or I commute, and local driving is low. We have an aftermarket 220-volt charger that is connected to the dryer outlet, and we rarely deplete the whole battery and rarely take it to 100% charge because it's not needed. But if we do that, it'll take about 3 hours or so to fully charge it. A full charge gives us 100 miles of range, which is more than enough to go to our favorite spot, the local beaches in Morro Bay or Avila or Shell Beach. We usually don't take it up to Paso Robles. We should have range anxiety, so taking it up the hill is usually stressful. So that's not something that we can do with the Leaf compared to a Tesla or longer range or even Bob's plug-in hybrid. Since the driving is different days, we just charge whenever we need to nowadays at home. Usually don't need to use any of the public charging, but before the pandemic, once in a while we would like plug into the downtown charging stations and enjoy a dinner or shopping or something like that and come back to a fully charged car. And that was fun. Thank you.
Justin, same question to you about charging and what your range is. And I'd also like to ask you to talk a little bit about your home solar and battery system and how that all interplays with charging.
Okay, thanks. And let me know if the wind starts making bad audio. I can put my hood on. But let's see. So with the Spark, we just sold the Spark, but when we had that, it was just charged on 110 to a regular outlet, 12 amps, and we could get a full charge overnight because it was about an 80-mile range, like a lot of these Leafs and first generation electric cars. And I wanted to mention, actually, we did take ours up to Paso on a regular basis, into Templeton and then back. And I'd say 99% of the time we did that, we made it back just fine. But there were a couple times that going up the grade on the way back, the time it happened to me, I was about 200 feet from the very top of the grade. And if I had made it to the top of the grade, I could have coasted down, gained power, and made it home no problem. But I was stuck, and I could not push it up the hill. So that was a bummer. Charge that guy at night. The Tesla I've never run out of charge with. It's the long range Model 3, so 315 miles approximately, which of course you never use. You only want to use about 80 to 90% of it. Charge that guy at night on a 240 outlet, just a NEMA 1450 plug that I had installed in my garage. And I'm on a really good PG&E plan for that. They have an electric vehicle plan that I'm grandfathered into now that works out to 3.25 cents per mile, with the efficiency of the car and the price that I pay at night, about 13 cents per kilowatt hour. So it's a really incredible deal to drive that car. Both cars had the same basic price. And then I also have about 4 kilowatts of solar on my house, and I have a Tesla Powerwall. So the big benefit of the solar is that it pays me back during the times that the solar is shining, and those times tend to be the more expensive time of use rates. So because of the way that net energy metering works, NEM for acronym people, when I generate solar in the middle of the day, I get paid at between 25 and sometimes up to 50 cents per kilowatt hour. But then when I pull it out of my car at night, or pull it into my car at night, it's only 13 cents per kilowatt hour. So financially, it's an incredible deal. I brought my, when I got my electric car and solar within about a year of each other, my electric bill went from 150 down to 10, and my gas bill went from around 150, 200 bucks a month to 0. And that was an incredible thing. And I want to just really kind of highlight that fact, because people often think, oh, gee, I'm buying an electric car, it's going to cost me more than, and yes, up front, that is true. But when you look at the cost of charging versus the cost of buying gasoline, it's night and day. I mean, I did an analysis actually with Bob. We've gone back and forth many, many times about the Prius Prime and the Model 3. And doing those analysis made me realize how dramatic the difference is. So if you compare the Model 3, which is a $38,000 base price, to let's say a Toyota Camry, which is a $25,000 base price, you find that the difference in price gets paid off within a few years if you're driving at a reasonable amount. And then when you do the carbon calculation of how much carbon dioxide is being put into the atmosphere by these two vehicles, even if you include the extra carbon debt, we call it, of the battery being produced that the Model 3 has, it's about 15 to 20,000 miles on your electric car before it takes over and becomes more carbon efficient than even a fairly fuel efficient Camry. So lastly, I'll just say with the Powerwall, the thing that's so great about it, besides the fact that it allows me to be off the grid if I need to be, if there's a power safety shutoff or just a standard power outage, my house is completely fine. But it also allows me to do a bit of price arbitrage between these different time of uses. So there's peak, mid-peak, and low peak or off-peak. And my battery allows me to charge the battery during mid-peak and then discharge the battery during peak, which basically means that I pay less price for my electricity. I pay for the mid-peak price, which is around 25 cents on my plan, and I don't pay for the high peak price, which is around 45 cents. So for every kilowatt hour my battery absorbs of solar, it saves me 20 cents. And it's just doing always doing that in the background. So that's one of the reasons it's really phenomenal, and I definitely recommend it to everyone. And lastly, I'll just say that the ability to deploy a battery like a Powerwall, a battery in a car that's not really can't do that yet, and stuff like thermostats, water heaters, all types of other electric appliances, the ability to take those and turn them on and off at different times is called distributed energy resources, and it is a huge deal. So it's a great argument for putting everything in your house electric now, so that when that stuff is available, it will really be able to help the grid. Sorry for the long answer.
Wow, thanks, Justin. That was some great information, and I think definitely helps make the financial case for electric vehicles and solar. All right, Barry, I'm gonna let you answer the same question about when and how you charge and what your range is, and then I think we'll be ready for a quiz question and raffling off our prize afterwards.
Okay, I don't have much to add to Justin. My charging is very similar. I have solar panels on the roof, and I have a different rate plan, so my charging is between midnight and 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I try and do, actually, since this pandemic, I've been staying at home quite a bit, so I actually try and charge when my solar is producing electricity for me, just to try and not use any of the grid, because the grid's always got a little bit of carbon in it, and so I use solar as much as I can, and my car has got about a 250-mile range, a little bit less than the Tesla. I like that Justin mentioned that when they talk about 250-mile range, you never really get 250 miles, because you can only go 80 or 90%, and then you got to charge again. And then if you're on the road, a fast charger will only take you up to 80%. But if you're charging at home, you can get it up to 100%. At least start your trip off that way. So
sorry, can I correct you real fast? Sorry, Barry. A fast charger will get you up to 100%, but not quickly.
True.
It'll slow down at 80 or 90.
Yeah, that is true. And it might be a little bit different for a Tesla too. But for my car, if you're paying fast charger rates, you don't even want to go above 80, because you're still paying the same rate and you're getting about a third of the charge. But I also wanted to say that I do also have an electric bike, although I use it mainly for recreation, a little bit of shopping around town. And then I'll turn it back to you, Alex.
Great, thanks, Barry. I think it's a great time for us to do our quiz question. And we've got a $25 gift card to Taco Temple, as you can see on Barry's screen. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drop the quiz question into the chat box and give everybody a couple minutes to type in an answer if they'd like. And then what we're gonna do is take a look at all the responses, and whoever is closest will win the prize, and we'll follow up with you afterwards. Okay, so the quiz question is, how many plug-in electric vehicles and battery electric vehicles are currently on the road in San Luis Obispo County? I'm going to go ahead and put the question into the chat box. And so this data is based off of DMV data as of the end of 2019. So go ahead and type your answers, and we'll come back to this in a few minutes and see who's closest. Okay. The next question I want to ask has to do about the current availability of public charging stations. And I'm just going to go ahead and let the panelists chime in when they'd like, instead of calling on folks. But see how people feel about how the public availability of charging stations is, and if they have thoughts about where we need to install more charging stations to either make it easier for themselves in their daily lives, or to help propel the EV market. So I'm just going to open it up to the panel, and whoever would like to take a stab at this first, go ahead.
Well, I'll go first. I never worry about it because after I go, my Prius Prime goes about 70% of the miles. It goes up to about 30 miles on electricity, and then I plug it in. And if you tune your car pretty much to what you think you'll use on a daily basis for the EV, then it kind of becomes a question of, well, do you want to invest in a really big battery that you won't use that much, which is a lot of money and a lot of embedded carbon, or do you want to just go and get 50 miles per gallon on gasoline, which I do on my Prius Prime? So the answer is you won't ever worry about charging if you have a Prius Prime. And I'm not a zealot about this. I just want to point out to people that the net price of a Prius Prime is about half that of the long range Model 3. And my calculation, Justin and I disagree on this, but by my calculation, unless you're extremely careful about when you charge your Model 3 on a long trip, you'll get the same. It has the same carbon content on a life cycle basis.
I'll follow that up, and we can go into some of the details on the analysis Bob and I did on the Prius Prime versus the Model 3. But in terms of charging, the really exciting thing about having a bigger battery, mine's a 75 kilowatt hour battery, and the thing is, you never have to worry about it unless you're on a road trip. And if you have a Tesla, a road trip is really, really easy. Like literally so easy that I took mine on 1,500 mile road trip 2 days after I bought it and had zero problem, because the car itself, you type in your destination, it maps it to you with Google Maps, and then it tells you, okay, you're going to need to stop. Then you're going to need to stop in Mojave for 25 minutes. And then you'll arrive with 35% of your power left. And it's incredibly accurate. So these superchargers that Tesla has are a game changer. And they completely change the value proposition for buying a Tesla versus a regular or a non-Tesla EV. And I'm not a hater on non-Tesla EVs, but I owned one, and I want them to be popular, but there is a huge difference when you are on a road trip of having a Tesla versus a Chevy or any other EV, to be frank. So do we need more charging stations that are quick chargers for road trips? Absolutely. I think we need a company to take that as a big initiative to make that happen. Tesla has done it on their own, and they've done a better job than every other car company combined. That's all.
I was going to chime in and add to the need for fast charging along highway and freeway corridors. That's certainly something I think we could always use more of, even though I primarily charge at home and at work. If we're going to have these for long ranges, we need that. And also something I think a lot of us will agree is just multi-unit dwellings, apartment buildings, and duplexes, and places where the property manager has or the property owner has control over, you know, whether the charging station goes in or not. That's just a big puzzle for me, because I feel like there's a lot of people that would really like to get in an EV once they try it, and the charging for them, if they don't own their own home, is really a challenge.
Yeah, and I want to add to that workplace charging is incredibly important. If you live in an apartment, you can charge at work, then you can get an EV. But if you don't have either thing, then you're in a real challenging situation.
I'll
I can, yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I'll just echo what Justin said. I really think we need to push workplace charging, and also it's not so much about the extent of the public available charging, but I just wish there was a lot more uniformity on the rates and the operation. Tesla, I have Tesla envy. Their charging stations probably charge you probably the same rate wherever you go, but I've had to pay up to to charge my car. I've had to pay up to $20 and as low as $7, and you often don't know until you've hooked up. So yeah, if they could be more consistent across the country, that would be great.
So I can add a little bit there, if you don't mind. And so I have to echo most of the statements made by all, with some slight disagreements. Our favorite vacation destinations are usually in remote parts, and that's not where even superchargers are available or so easily. And so it just, so our second car is a hybrid, not a plug-in, for Escape all-wheel drive, and that's what we use for long trips. I agree that we need a lot more infrastructure, especially like Molly pointed, for apartments and those that don't have garages. If you know, the best advantage of an electric car is having your own charger at home, because that's like having a gas station, and instead of taking 10 minutes for fueling a car, you essentially, it takes 30 seconds, 10 to plug it in and 20 seconds to put the cord back. And literally you don't have to worry about it. It takes a mindset change, right? Because if you forget to plug it in the night, then the next day you're going to find yourself without a car, stuff like that. And also, especially owning not a Tesla, a Nissan Leaf, that is not a high range car. We definitely suffered from range anxiety for a long time. So there were some disadvantages, there was some advantages. All in all, I think we had similar experience like Justin said. We had the time of use metering in our Bay Area home. We got so many rebates back then. In fact, after we bought the Nissan Leaf, actually, not only did our gas costs go down, but also our home electricity costs went down because of the time of use factors. So all in all, it's been a great experience. We do need a lot of charging infrastructure. If it was the same level of convenience to just charge and go on road trips wherever in the country as it is for a gas car, then I don't think anybody would want to buy a gas car of any variety.
Right. You know, I checked the Tesla route planner this morning, and if you want to go from here to Mammoth or Las Vegas, it would be about two hours of on the road charging. Now, you know, so everybody has their level. If you have small kids in the car, you may or may not want to add 2 hours to your trip. Doesn't seem like a lot to some families, but for our family, that's not a good option. So since by my calculation, there's no difference in the carbon load, using 80 gallons a year with the Prius Prime, or buying the much more expensive M3. That's why we opted for the Prime. So everybody's got to make that decision on their own, but I do not believe that there's a carbon difference. Barry and Justin may disagree with me, but the 75, the best information I can get, and this is not easily available, but the best I can get is that there's about eight tons of carbon dioxide embedded in a 75 kilowatt hour battery. And that's not insignificant. That worked out over a 10-year period. That'd be about 0.8 of a ton per year. And that's, like I say, that's about equal to 80 gallons of gasoline. Well, it's exactly equal to 80 gallons of gasoline being burned. So that's a trade-off. Less expensive, same carbon load, half the price for the Prime. That's why part of the reason we chose the Prime, either convenience or both convenience and price.
All right, thank you, everybody. So that actually was a question that we received from an attendee asking about the carbon comparison between the Prius and the Tesla. So in a couple of minutes, I'll let if any of the other panelists want to chime in on that question as well.
I'm
but
sorry,
first of all,
it just got interesting, and I'm sorry I misbooked this, so I have to leave for an appointment at 1 now. I'm so sorry. Barry, will you speak up for me, okay? You're my designate. You're my proxy with Justin, okay?
Oh, I was just about to get my spreadsheet out, Bob.
Okay.
I'll do my best, Bob.
Thank you.
all right. Well, thank you, Bob, and thanks for joining us for this event. All right. So now I want to see who won the quiz question. So the answer to the question that I asked a few minutes ago was there are currently 3,316 plug-in hybrid and battery electric vehicles on the road in San Luis Obispo County. So Jackie, did anybody get that exactly correct?
No one got that exactly correct. There was a few really good answers, but Mark B from the APCD actually was the closest at 1,800 vehicles.
All right. Well, congrats, Mark. We will get you that gift card. Enjoy Taco Temple. I'll definitely be a little jealous there. But I think that just speaks to there's a lot more electric vehicles on the road than a lot of us even think. And a lot of the manufacturers are doing a good job of making them blend in a lot with conventional gas vehicles, and they're really starting to take up a lot more of the car population out there. All right, let's go to another question. So I'm going to ask the panelists if they can talk a little bit about what their favorite features are of their EV, and also let folks talk about if there's any future EVs that are coming out or new technologies that they're interested in. So let's go ahead and Barry, I'll start with you if you have any comments on that question.
Alex, were you gonna talk to us about leasing or buying?
Yeah. If you'd like to address that as well now, that's great. Or next.
Yeah, I was kind of giving shorter answers on the other ones. I wanted to spend a minute or so on this whole thing about leasing and buying.
Okay, let's start there then. Let's start with leasing versus buying.
Yeah, because both of my cars, my original Nissan Leaf and then my current Kia, I started with a lease, and then and the big advantage of starting with a lease is that there's a $7,500 tax credit that is folded into the lease, that if you're a lower income individual, you won't be able to use that tax credit if you buy it. And so so they give you that when they negotiate the lease right off the top. That's now there are certain vehicles that no longer get you that $7,500 credit, like Tesla, and I think Chevy has also used up theirs. But if you're buying a car that is still getting those 7,500 tax credits, then the lease is the best way to capture that 7,500 credit. And then at the end of the lease, or even before the lease ends, you can buy the car if you want, and and you'll end up paying less than if you bought it right from the start. And so that worked out for me real good, and especially for my Nissan, because when it came down, towards the end of the lease, the company sent me an email, said, please buy this back, we'll give you an extra $5,000 off. So I ended up really profiting, doing a good job on my Nissan Leaf. And with my Kia, I've also, 1 year into it, I went ahead and paid it off. So really crunch the numbers. If you're a lower income individual that you're having a hard time, getting that 7,500 tax credit, do the lease, and then you've got the best of both worlds, whether you keep the lease or buy it at the end of the lease. Okay.
I can second that. When I got my Chevy Spark, it was on a lease, and I paid a very small amount per month on the lease. And then when the lease was up, they originally wanted $15,000 for it, based on the original lease contract. And I said, no, thanks. And then they called me back and said, oh, how about 6? And I said, okay, I'll buy it for 6. So they're very generous with these leases these days. And I think it's partly because California has
Justin, we're losing you a little bit.
Carbon content that they need to sell these EVs at this point in their life cycle. Oh, that was all. Sorry, I need to be more clear when I stop talking. That was the end. My bandwidth is low. Okay, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Thanks, Justin.
I'm on a cellular connection. Okay, sorry. I was already done. Sorry about that.
Okay.
I can quick pitch into that question too. Yeah, and so we've owned the Nissan Leaf since the start, and I don't regret it one bit. But just to do an objective hindsight, I would say leasing is better option. So I agree with the other panelists here. It just helps you to because the technology is improving so fast. Every 3 years, you can get a nice new upgraded electric car, and they're cheap. And I haven't followed up with the tax credit recently because I didn't have to.
Yeah, I just want to say one more thing, because I do agree that leasing is a really good deal right now. However, I want to point out a bigger macro trend with electric cars, or just a bigger factor that is that they have over gas cars. Like, a big advantage is that they're going to last a really long time. These drivetrains in an electric car have so few moving parts compared to a gas car that these drivetrains are going to last 500,000 miles, no problem. And yeah, the battery might not last that long, especially in a non-Tesla, but you can replace the battery as Asit did and keep it going. So that's a bit of an argument for buying the car. And maybe you lease it and then buy it out like Barry and I did. But really, I just want to point out that these cars are going to run a very, very long time. And that is all.
And no oil changes to boot.
Yep. No maintenance. Windshield wiper fluid.
All right, Jackie, I just want to check in with you really quick. Do we have any questions in the chat or the Q&A that we should address?
No questions except for the one that was answered about the carbon comparison between the Prime and the Tesla.
Okay. All right. Well, we have 10 more minutes, so I'd like to just ask another question or two, and then we can wrap things up here. So I'll open this up to all panelists. If folks could just share, a little bit about why they decided to go electric versus a conventional gas car, and if there's anything that you would do differently next time when you're considering a vehicle. I know some folks touched on, maybe they would consider leasing next time, but if there's anything else that they would consider or help to make that argument for somebody else, please feel free to chime in.
I'll go. I just think it's super, super fun to be part of the future. And I have 2 teenage boys that are pretty tech savvy, and it's just fun to be, go through this transition with them and be a proponent for change. Like I said, a long time ago, I saw the potential in electric cars, and it's just so exciting to be in this time. I mean, a second reason is just, of course, air quality and carbon considerations, but it's just the logical thing to do as far as fuel efficiency. You're not burning a fuel and creating a bunch of waste heat. Your brakes, when you brake, the energy's going back into the car. I just love the fuel efficiency that's involved in these kinds of vehicles.
Yeah, I'd like to add, I mean, besides the price and the fuel efficiency and all that stuff, the actual fun level of driving an EV is out of control. I mean, the ability to just press on that pedal and just go. I mean, the responsiveness of, it doesn't have to be a Tesla. I mean, any of these electric cars are super fast and quick and fun and quiet and smooth. I mean, it's just an overall better driving experience pretty much down the line. I mean, like, you don't have to, you don't have noise. You don't have to turn a key. You don't, like, there's just so many small things that add up to a superior experience that it's really hard to describe unless you've actually driven one. And if you do have a Tesla, the autopilot is a game changer. I mean, when you go on you want to go on a road trip with autopilot, because you just flip it on and you can relax. You don't take your eyes off the road, but you can relax. And it takes the stress of driving. I give it about a 70% decrease in the stress of driving. So at the end of the day, if you're driving 5-7 hours or something, you're going to feel, you'll have more energy at that end of the day.
I can add a bit to that question. Barry, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I was just going to add that everybody talked about the fun. That was the first thing that came to my mind. And I want to put a plug in for Saturday. I'm going to be one of them. We're going to have 6 different virtual test drives. And so if you want to see how some of these cars operate, we've got Kia, we've got a Honda, we've got Nissan, Chevy Volt, and I'm still working on trying to get a Tesla. So join us on Saturday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., 6 different vehicles on the top of each hour.
Okay, I guess I can chime in now then. So the original question was, why did you buy the original EV, and what would you do next? So for me, I think when I bought the original EV, we put together a spreadsheet of costs, driving costs, and one of the row items there was time saved due to carpool lanes, which was a big factor then. And it was an absolute no-brainer with both those. To add to it, it was zero emission. I was not fully confident of doing leases back then, so I chose to buy. Also, we had seen the Who Killed the Electric Car documentary, in which GM completely confiscated every single one of their EV1s and destroyed them for some reason, according to the documentary. And so I didn't want that to happen, so I didn't want to lease. For the next car, I would probably go for something that is longer range, doesn't have range anxiety, and would likely be a lease. Thank you. I can hand it back to Alex.
Okay, we've got time for one or two more panelists to chime in on this question if they'd like, or talk about anything else EV related that they forgot to mention earlier.
I have another forgot to mention, just the health benefits of not breathing in the fume and the carbon monoxide and all this stuff that, you know, when you're driving around a gas-powered car. I mean, I have one, I have a couple. I'm not bashing them, but just actually living the life where you're not going to a gas station and breathing in the vapors, and you don't have a tank full of vapors. It's just kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, especially now with COVID, going to a gas station is gross and risky. Can I follow up with the Tesla versus Prius Prime kind of carbon content conversation that Bob and I have always had? I have a spreadsheet that I would like to share in the chat. Okay, so I'm putting the spreadsheet in here. So basically, it shows the embedded carbon in the car initially, and then it shows what happens per mile, how much embedded carbon is in each mile of driving that vehicle. And it sort of depends with the Prius, it sort of depends on how much you drive on electric versus how much you drive on gas. Bob said he does it 70% on electric, so I use that calculation in the spreadsheet. And it also depends on how much carbon content the grid has when you charge your car at night or whenever. And so I took an average California grid carbon content and put that into the spreadsheet. And so what I wanted to point out here is, even though there are some different assumptions of how much carbon is in the car at the beginning and whatnot, and you can make a copy of this spreadsheet and change the assumptions for yourself if you'd like. But essentially what it comes out with is that if you drive 10,000 miles per year in a Tesla, you're putting about 500 kilograms of carbon into the atmosphere, and that's just through the grid. If you drive a Prius Prime, you put about 1,500 kilograms of carbon into the atmosphere per year. And if you drive a Fusion hybrid, so this isn't even going to the Camry, this is a Fusion hybrid, which is more efficient than a Camry, you're putting in 2,700 kilograms of carbon into the atmosphere every year. So basically, when you take that over the life of the car, you can see in the spreadsheet when it flips. I have a little chart that shows when it flips from the Tesla being more carbon intensive to the other cars being more carbon intensive. And it's a lot faster than I expected it would be when I first made this spreadsheet. And even if you want to tweak, you know, give the Tesla more carbon content at the beginning, it'll just take a little bit longer. And so when you consider that these cars are going to last easily 100, 200,000 miles, probably more like 500, 800,000 miles, it's kind of a no-brainer to, from a carbon standpoint, to get a Tesla or another electric car, because even like, you know, you look at the assumption of how much carbon is in each kilowatt hour on the California grid. Well, that's changing. That's changing every year, every day, practically. You know, gas plants are being cleaner. So an electric car is really the only car you can buy that is getting cleaner as time goes on.
All right, thank you, Justin. I'm gonna cut you off there because we are at the top of the hour. But I encourage attendees or panelists to take a look at that spreadsheet. reach out to either Justin or Bob or Barry. I'm sure they'd be happy to debate the carbon content of the Prius Prime versus the Tesla and other models as well. I just want to thank all our attendees and panelists for being with us here today. I think this was a really instructive and informational session. National Drive Electric Week is going to continue tomorrow with EV 101, which will be a webinar at 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. And then, as Barry mentioned, National Drive Electric Week will conclude on Saturday with 6 virtual ride and drives starting at 9 a.m. Until 3 p.m. So keep your eyes out for those other events, and thank you all for attending. All right, signing off.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.